From Nashville, Tennessee and the Nashville Broadcasting Network, it's the You Gotta Love It Show with your host, Keith Bradford. You never know who's going to show up and what's going to happen, but one thing is for certain, you gotta love it. Here's your host, Keith Bradford.
You gotta love it. You gotta love it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into the You Gotta Love It podcast once again. This week's special guest is Kent Gill, and I'm so proud that he sent me everything I asked him to do for this show. I sent him a series of 6 questions to get the show started, and with some help from his friend that was running the camera, between the two of them, they managed to not only answer the 6 questions, but in this clip, you'll also hear him sing a little bit of his famous song, Tide Winds. Let's get the show started right now with this clip, and I'll be back with some more news right after this.
We held close to each other in the breeze of these tide winds. Oh, tide winds, can you find her? Do you know where she may be? Tell me, do you ever see her in your travels from sea to sea?
Tide Winds. We're back with Mr. Kent Gill. Kent's great song. That's off your first album?
Yes.
Let Not These Songs Be Wasted.
Yes, indeed.
That is a great one. Did that chart on your string of hits?
It did. Thankfully, it went to number 1 on Airplay Express charts.
Yeah, it deserved it. I hope somebody picks that up and puts it on some regular rotations. I got some questions here from Keith, and I'd like to ask them to you. Which do you like better, writing or performing your music?
Well, that's kind of a tough thing to figure out. You know, I love them both. I love to write songs, and I love to perform. I suppose, if I think about it, since I perform a lot of songs, some that I didn't write, probably I like performing better because you get to interact with the audience, and that's really a special thing whenever you're singing to an audience and whenever they're enjoying it. So I suppose that performing would have the edge, but I do love to write.
And performing your own music probably has a special thrill, because I know people really have good feedback that I know when they hear your stuff.
Hope so.
Well, you have a lot of stories from the road. What's your most memorable moment so far in your musical career?
You know, I guess for anyone who's been there, for me too, the most memorable is going to be stepping out on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry. Right out of high school, I was 18 years old, and I'd got a job with David Houston and his manager Tillman Franks. And Tillman had booked David a guest appearance on the Opry. And that was when the Opry was still in the Ryman. And I stepped out on the stage of the Opry with David and played guitar while he sang his song that he had released on Epic Records at the time. But yes, playing the Opry was it.
That's fantastic. Well, I know David Houston was a big star. Got to start here on the Louisiana Hayride right here in Shreveport, Louisiana. And
sure did.
You played in the Cedar Grove Trio. Was that what it's called?
Yeah, at that time, it was just David, Tillman, and me. Tillman played bass, I played guitar. David played rhythm guitar and sang. And Tillman named our group the Cedar Grove 3. David Houston, the Cedar Grove 3.
Fantastic. Well, you and Tillman stayed around and played on the Louisiana Hayride Band for a few years after that.
Sure did, yeah. Yeah, Tillman was with the Louisiana Hayride Band for a while. They went to Washington, D.C. for a week and played up there. I joined the Hayride Band a little later and played with them for about 20 years. That was a nice experience.
Yeah, I've heard you, and y'all had some great talent in that group. Well, what are your thoughts on the decline of CD sales as more and more people are shifting to the internet and digital downloads?
You know, that's kind of a mixed thing. Number one, as a singer-songwriter, this means, in general, songwriters receive less than they did back in the day of the vinyl record, and so do the artists. So it's kind of a negative in that regard. But then there's a positive also on the other side, and when you think about it, the positive to me is this. With the internet there's an avenue for myself and for a number of other independents like myself to get their music out there and get it heard. And that was not available. There was a time when the music industry was almost a closed door thing. You had to be with a major label in order to get your music heard. But nowadays with the internet, there's that avenue.
True, and that is a good thing. Well, do you think your style of music is ever going to come back, that traditional country sound?
I love traditional country music, and I can only hope that it is going to come back. I'd like to see it again on mainstream radio. Oh, you do have some traditional country on mainstream radio now and then, but not the way it used to be. But, it goes in cycles, and I'm thinking and hoping that maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, traditional country will be back in full swing on the mainstream radio stations.
I hope so. I like to listen to those rare channels that play that traditional country music.
Me too.
Well, let me wrap it up with one more question. Can you tell us a funny story that happened to you while you were touring?
Well, there were lots of funny stories while I was touring. Well, let me think. This is a fairly unique one. We were going to Norway, and I was excited to travel to Norway. Never had been there before, so we flew over there on a big jet plane. On the show was David Houston. Tillman and I were with him. And also on the show, headlining was Skeeter Davis and her band. So we had a lot of fun on the plane going over there with them. And then when we landed, we took a car to ride down to the southernmost city of Norway, which is Mondal. And on the way, I got to see the countryside, and it was very beautiful. Waterfalls and mountains, just beautiful scenery. But got to where we were going to be staying, got checked in, and I needed to practice a little bit on my fiddle. I wanted to play some before the shows got started. But something about the air pressure or something in the airplane had caused the fingerboard to come off the fiddle. I mean, it just came unglued. So I needed glue in the worst way. I'd been told, though, that in Norway everybody speaks English and you'll have no problems. Well, I took a walk, went down and found a convenience store, went inside, explained to the lady attendant there what the situation was, that I needed some glue, told her all about the fiddle. I had to call it a violin. And anyway, she understood everything I said except the word glue. She had no idea what I meant. So she came out to the shelves to try to help me just find it by browsing. And we were walking around, and people started to gather with us. They sensed that we were looking for something. They were trying to help us. We had a crowd, 4 or 5 people anyway. And I started explaining to them what was needed. And finally, one of the guys' eyes lit up, and he said, "Lim!" And then they all chimed in and said, "Lim!" And as it turns out, the word in Norwegian for glue is lim, L-I-M. So the lady got me a container of lim, and I took it back and I fixed up my fiddle, and everything went well from then on. I still have that container around here somewhere. I didn't want to throw that away. It's a keepsake. I kept it. And I noticed, a few years ago, I looked at it a little closer, and on the outside it says Super Lean. Super Lean.
Yeah, that's a funny story. Well, let's take it out of here and play a little more of that Tide Winds, and we'll send this off to Keith.
Sounds good to me. Oh, tide winds, can you find her? Do you know where she may be? Tell me, do you ever see her in your travels from sea to sea?
Thank you very much, Ken, for answering those questions. I asked those particular questions because I thought that those were things that maybe your fans would like to know about you and what your thoughts are on the different subjects of the questions that I asked. So thank you once again for taking the time to answer those. Also, you asked me a question on this next clip. You asked me if any time in my singing career did someone come up to me and say, when are you going to get a real job? Well, you know what? It's been asked many, many times, mostly by my family and friends. They would ask on several occasions, when are you going to quit that music business and get a real job? Something that's got benefits, where your wife and kids would have medical coverage and you'd have a 401k and profit sharing plans and things like that. And yes, the answer to your question, have I ever been asked when you're going to get a real job? The answer is a great big fat yes. I've been asked that on many, many times. So with that being said, let's go ahead and cue up the song that you wrote called Daddy's Gonna Get a Real Job.
Keith, back when you were on the road playing music, did anybody ever come up to you and ask you when you were going to get a real job? I know that I've had musician friends tell me that they've had relatives and strangers come up and ask them, well, when are you going to quit music and get a real job? That's what gave me the idea to write this song. It's called Daddy's Gonna Get a Real Job Someday. I got back into town in the mid-afternoon, road weary after 17 days. I heard my little boy with a friend in his room. He was talking about me as they played. I stood there and listened as they carried on. He said my dad might get home today. He plays music and it seems like he's always gone. But Daddy's gonna get a real job someday. Daddy's gonna get a real job someday. Yes, he is. Daddy's gonna get a day job, I've heard Mama say. Grandpa says he'll find out that music don't pay. Daddy's gonna get a real job someday. When Daddy's not working, he's here all day long, and we're happy till he leaves again. Then he's off to play music in them old honky-tonks. My teacher says it's a sin. We all sure get lonesome when Daddy's not home. I saw Mama crying today. I hugged her and told her, don't worry, don't cry. Daddy's gonna get a real job someday. Daddy's gonna get a real job someday. Yes, he is. Daddy's gonna get a day job, I've heard Mama say. Grandpa says he'll find out that music don't pay. Daddy's gonna get a real job someday. Daddy's gonna get a real job someday. Yes, he is. Daddy's gonna get a day job, I've heard Mama say. Grandpa says he'll find out that music don't pay. Daddy's gonna get a real job someday.
Hi everybody, Dave Cayley here. I came on today to personally invite each and every one of you to check out my good buddy Keith Bradford's podcast of his show called You Gotta Love It. You can find that on the NBRN Radio Online YouTube channel. And who knows, they might even play one of my songs. But just remember, you gotta love it.
What a great job you did on that, Kent. Daddy's going to get a real job. A real job, not a job in the music business. Speaking about the music business, there's a lot of folks that don't know when to retire. And we're not talking about our friend Kent Gill that's on this show. We're talking about some folks that just simply don't know that it's time for them to get out of the music business. Let's watch this segment and I'll be right back.
I don't know what it is about our egos as musicians and singers and performers, but for some reason we don't know when it's time to retire. I just watched a TV show just the other night, and I'm going to tell you something. That legend that was out there performing needed to retire 10 years ago. She looked bad. She looked nervous, which was very, very unusual for a performer that seasoned. Shouldn't have looked nervous, but she looked terribly nervous. During one segment, she missed her cues, her music cues, didn't come in on time. The backup singers had to take up the slack, and then she looked at them as if it was their fault. You got to know when to retire. You don't stay in this business until you walk out there with a walker and a cane. You know when to retire and get out gracefully.
We hope you enjoyed that. Every week we get a little lesson on stuff that they don't teach you in the music business. You can only find out about those things right here on the You Gotta Love It video podcast each week. And that's why we invite you to comment about what you see and hear on this show. And if you're not already a subscriber, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. We sure would like to know that you are not only being told in advance that you're getting a new video podcast show sent your way, but also that you are watching each week. That would really, really help us a lot, determining what we're going to be presenting to you in the weeks to come. We're going to close out this week's show with another song performed by Kent Gill, and this is called The Night Hank Williams Came to Town. See you next week, everybody.
You know, Keith, people are still, after all these years, still fascinated by Hank Williams. And I understand that because I am too. Here in Shreveport, I run into people from time to time who saw Hank Williams on the stage of the Louisiana Hayride all those years ago. And they all have a story about Hank. There's another story about Hank, written in song by Bobby Braddock and Charlie Williams. A song called The Night Hank Williams Came to Town. Harry Truman was our president. A Coke and burger cost you 30 cents. I was still in love with Shirley Brown on the night Hank Williams came to town. I Love Lucy debuted on TV. That was one big event we didn't see, 'cause no one stayed at home for miles around on the night Hank Williams came to town. Mama ironed my shirt and Daddy let me take the truck. I drove on up to Pitkin and I picked old Shirley up. For once we didn't stop or fool around on the night Hank Williams came to town. 1,000 people sweltered in the gym. Then I heard somebody whisper, "Hey, that's him." That's when the crowd let out this deafening sound on the night Hank Williams came to town. On and on he sang into the night. Jambalaya, cheating heart, I saw the light. Hey, how'd they get Miss Audrey in that gown on the night Hank Williams came to town? Shirley had her picture made with Hank beside his car. She said he sure is humble for a Louisiana hayride star. Then Shirley said, why don't we hang around? It ain't often that Hank Williams comes to town. While Hank signed his autograph on Bueller Risner's bank, me and Shirley got acquainted with the Drifting Cowboys band. The effect on all our lives was quite profound on the night Hank Williams came to town. I wandered so aimless, life filled with sin, I wouldn't let my dear Savior in. Then Jesus came like a stranger in the night.
I saw the light. I saw the light. I saw the light. No more darkness. No more